So I'm going to kick it over to Josh and Alyssa to talk a little bit about Remy Cofield, the new GM for Arkansas.
Yeah, before we were actually on this, we were backstage when DJ had everybody out here talking about the races in Oakland, but we were all discussing Remy Cofield and the changes that are going to be happening at the University of Arkansas and what those look like. You've been working with the University of Arkansas for a very, very long time, covering them at Pig Trail Nation. I'd love to know what your initial take was when you heard about this, and what do you think is going to happen now?
Well, I think when this got introduced into college sports a few years ago, everyone was like, Arkansas needs someone like this, because at the end of the day, it's really hard for these coaches to coach their programs, have the organization that they want, and then now you've got to talk money with players. And that's a hard conversation to have. And Josh, I understand, those players are talking to each other about what everybody is making. It is a hard thing to really balance. And so you need someone to come in. Stanford kind of took that really big first step with the splash hire in Andrew Luck. Andrew Luck coming in, obviously a Stanford legend, being able to help kind of facilitate the NIL money and do all those kind of things. So what was Arkansas going to do? The biggest surprise for me was that they hired a GM to be over all of the athletic programs and not just football. It's an interesting step towards a direction where, is this going to work? How is he going to facilitate and organize all of those things? Will he have a team under him, which is a thing that we were talking about? How is that all going to work? But Sam Pittman said when he was asked about it is, I need someone to come in who has the experience of doing this. So you got to go to the NBA. You got to go to the NFL. Maybe you got to go to Major League Baseball. Find somebody who knows how to deal with athletes and money. That's exactly what they did, bringing Remy Cofield in as the director of scouting for the Boston Celtics. That's what he was originally, or, previously till he took this job. Mm-hmm. So how is that all going to work?
I think that it's a weird hire because it has to do with basketball. And I think a lot of people initially were like, well, it's basketball season, number one. Coach Cal is one of the biggest names in college sports as it is. So I think they were like, oh, well, this has to be like a Coach Cal thing was the initial thought. But then they came out and said, no, he's going to oversee all sports. And like you said, it's like, that's a pretty big thing to do. He's going to need some help. Is he going to have those guys that kind of oversee each individual sport? And then I started thinking, well, if he does that, that's going to require a lot more money. And money's the issue right now. And instead of paying players, we're now paying a lot more staff.
Yeah.
With benefits and all different
people.
Types of stuff. Right.
Yeah.
You do have to hire people. But I started looking into Remy Cofield a little bit, and I was talking to you guys about this earlier. He does have that history with the Celtics. Before that, he was in the G League, and he was the GM over the G League team. He moved up. He has scouting experience. But really what must impress me the most, he has a master's in business analytics. So I know they're bringing him in to be able to manage the money. Because here's what I think about when I think about this role. It's not the recruiting or helping recruit. It's really managing the funds that are available and strategically using those to put together the best roster on all those teams. And so you've heard Sam Pittman say things like, oh, well, man, we're going to get this revenue sharing thing, and it's going to help with recruiting. And I think it might help with recruiting kids that can't get into SEC schools. But the revenue sharing thing is pretty much set. We have a Title IX laws in the college sports, right? You got to give the male athletes the same thing as the female athletes, and everybody on every sport at the University of Arkansas is going to have to get the exact same amount. If it's $20.5 million, then we're looking at about $40,000 for each player that's on a roster at the University of Arkansas. And you can't give one more than the other, or you're going to be subject to litigation and getting sued, and Arkansas even losing more money. Unless something changes there, and I don't know how it is going to change, I'm going to say everybody's going to get $40,000 across the board on all SEC schools. And then you're going to be still looking at your collectives to supply the X factor so that Remy can then come to them and go, okay, this is how much we have. Let me now figure out how I'm going to use that the best to go recruit a guy like Grant Cook out of Jonesboro.
Well, and I think the big thing is, though, the conversations. You are now having these conversations as student athletes with Remy Cofield and not with your head coach. And that was the biggest issue.
Right.
Was they're coming into Sam Pittman's office on a weekly basis, not to talk about football, but to talk about money. And now you take that distraction away because Sam says, that's not my conversation anymore.
Exactly.
And I think it kind of really changes a dynamic that this football team has been struggling with.
Yeah, and so Coach Pittman is like, they're not coming to him and say, how do I get better on the field? How am I going to improve to get more playing time? They're coming to him saying, hey, I just got offered $200,000 to go to LSU
right.
or wherever it may be. And
cut the check.
Now Coach Pittman's having to deal with product on the field and how do I keep my players happy off the field? And when you look at how the NFL works, right? So this is a little bit like professional sports at this point with getting GMs involved with the money. And and all of those things. The coach can coach. The coach can do what he's hired to do, which is put a good product out on the field, put the best players in the game, and the GM handles the money side of it. So the coach wants you to get paid.
Right.
And I remember, and I know DJ can attest to this, when you're in the NFL, when those guys came back from the GM's office after signing that big contract, the first person to meet them is the head coach. Like, way to go, man.
Right.
Congrats. Like, I'm so happy for you and your family and all those things. So I think it does get, kind of back to the old school top style of college football where the coaches coach and the money side is off the field. Not really. Now, they're going to be involved, obviously. They got to have those conversations just like a head coach and GM do. But the players are not walking into Coach Pittman's office upset because I know I'm worth this. I'm only getting this. And it removes that aspect.
I think that's a secondary problem, right? It's a big problem because it's huge. It causes guys to want to transfer because these kids are emotional. We're all emotional in our late teens and early 20s. So we're going to transfer if we feel like we don't have the best relationship with the coach, or we're asking a guy for money and he can pull those strings and he's not pulling it. So taking those strings off of Sam Pittman is huge to be able to allow that a relationship. But the first problem, the real problem, is do we have the money in the collective for Remy Cofield to even make a difference? Because again, this offseason has been a lot of hoopla about, oh, we got the revenue sharing. I still don't think it solves our issue. And it comes down to the collectives because he's going to have to be working hand in hand with those guys.
I think that's a great point that you make because a lot of people are waiting for this revenue sharing to start in April and then say, oh, we're good now.
We're not good.
And they're not good now because the collectives will still be able to raise money. Every other school in the SEC is still raising money through these collectives. And no matter what you think or say, Arkansas is behind. And they know that. So they still have to be able to go in and say, okay, I can give everybody $40,000. That's your base salary.
Right.
But now I have this kind of money. And what are we now paying? Again, a Taylon Green
Right.
or a Nellie Davis or Jonas Adu to come in.
Right.
Those conversations still need to be had. That money still needs to come from somewhere. And now Remy is probably going to be the one to decide in this NIL collective, how much money do each sports get?
Right. And we were talking about this earlier. The biggest change, everybody talks about like what's happening this summer when revenue sharing. One of the other things that happened with it is now Remy can come out into the open and our collectives can come out to the open about offering recruits in high school a contract. Beforehand, it had to be hush, hush, wink, wink, nod. I'll take care of you when you get here. Here's what we can do for you. Now it's like, actually, here's a contract, high school senior. Here's what we have to offer you. It's made up of this many charity signings, this many signings and appearances, these many charity appearances, whatever it is, this many commercials. Remy's job on top of just like being business analytics is now going to be, along with Hunter Yurachek, is going to be, hey, how do I establish relationships in the community and these business sponsors, these business advertisers to come in and say, hey, we want to pull you into the program. We want to solidify better relationships to get more money. Because if everybody's doing that around the SEC, it's going to raise the tide. And that $20.5 million that we are available today is just an average. All teams in the SEC get an average at $20.5 million next season. Now, if everybody starts doing more, that average goes up. So that's going to be a part of his job too, raising funds.
Another thing that just popped into my head too, you're dealing with agents.
Yeah.
Now you're going to start to deal with agents. And I promise you, Sam Pittman is very happy to take that off of his plate. He don't want to be dealing with no more agents anymore. Remy's the one having these conversations.
Grant, you had an agent at one point in time.
I did. Very short point in time.
I don't care, man. You had one. The agent's job is to get the most bang for his buck for that player. And
No
so
doubt.
one way to look at it is an agent will look across the board and go, okay, here's what the other tight ends in the league are making.
Yeah.
And here's how they performed. And based on that performance, what they make goes up. So you kind of do a comp like you do in real estate. You look around at what everything's worth around you and you kind of say, hey, this is what my guy's worth. But if your team is in more dire need, he becomes worth a little bit more because you really got to get this guy. So that's going to make it challenging for college sports in general, because now we're like back to pro sports. It's crazy. So Remy is going to have his hands full because he doesn't just have to do this for football. He has to do this for every sport.
Yeah.
It is.
Right now.
I'm really curious to see how when he finally gets to campus and kind of settles in, what exactly is built around him, the resources that he's given, and how year one kind of goes.